So for example, this is your on-prem. So this is your on-prem and this is your cloud environment, okay? So if we want to establish a communication from the on-prem, for example, in the on-prem, we use a directory service which is known as ADDS, Active Directory Domain Services. Yes. So what is the use of ADDS? It is again used for authentication and authorization. So ADDS does not have a single component. It has more than one component. For example, if we have federation, if we have a set of federated users and we want them to sign in, so ADFS will be used. If we have some certificate issues or any other dependencies, so there are a lot of dependent services of ADDS like ADCS, ADLDS, lightweight directory services, and so on. So for each of the for each of the dedicated use, we have a directory suite, you can say. Now, when you are working in the on-prem and this is a user, this user one is signing into on-prem environment. For example, his name is John. Now, John is having a username plus password and he is signing into the on-prem environment easily. Now, since we are doing a migration project, somehow a application migrated to the cloud platform. This cloud is our Azure platform here. We are referring to. Since we have migrated to the cloud platform, now John was having a username and password access over the on-prem, but the application has moved to the Azure platform. Now, how will John sign in into the Azure environment now, since the application is already here? So we use a service known as AD Connect to synchronize your identities from the on-prem to the cloud. And for that synchronization only, we are using AD Connect, and here we use single sign-on capability. What is the single sign-on capability? It tells that the user, John, using his own username and password can now sign into the cloud application as well. Do we need to make any changes? No, not required, because we are synchronizing the identity from the on-prem to the cloud now. So that is one way, and that is why we say we can easily connect our on-prem and cloud. And we need to understand that when you are working in on-prem, we are working with ADDS services. So if we see the architecture again, for example, this is our on-prem environment. In the on-prem environment, we are having ADDS. So ADDS, the on-prem is usually a private environment, you can say. Since it is private environment, we don't expose the content online, or we don't need an online redirection. So for that, we have no REST APIs or HTTP or HTTP protocols which are used. Instead, we use Kerberos, NTLM, etc. And also, when you connect to ADDS environment, we usually use LDAP connection, lightweight directory application protocols, which are not exposed to the internet. Now, if you compare this with Entra solutions, which is provided in the cloud, what is the difference? Entra works on to the protocols such as HTTP, HTTPS, right? And also here we use REST APIs for connectivity. Here it is more of a hierarchical structure. If you see in the ADDS, there we have organization units, forest structures, and so on. But those structure is not there in Entra, because there is a clause in Entra that if, for example, I created a new company called as ankitatech.com, okay, and I want to open a new branch of this company which is Ankita Tech India.com. So I cannot deal this one as a child domain of Ankita Tech, which will be the parent domain in that case. We cannot do that. So since we have two different domain, we will have to buy two different set of domains or work in two different tenant for us to make this possible. So there is no child and parent child relationship between the domain structure. That is why usually when we work with Entra, it is known as a flat structure, and when you work with ADDS, it is known as a hierarchical structure or setup. That was one of the most important difference when you compare ADDS with on-prem. So we know that we need to synchronize the identities from the on-prem to the cloud environment. Now, since we want to synchronize from the on-prem to the cloud, we just saw a service of AD Connect. But this AD Connect cannot be used everywhere. For example, there is an application here which is a legacy application. Now, this legacy application will not work with the Entra solutions, even if you move the application. So, this legacy application is only compatible with ADDS platform. Since it is only compatible with ADDS platform, what is the way around then? So, then we have a dedicated service for Azure connectivity or synchronization that is known as Azure ADDS. So this is specifically for those applications or services which are legacy application and still require ADDS type of platform to work on. And then when you work with AD Connect, there can be different ways in which you connect the on-prem and cloud. So one of the way is password hash synchronization or pass-through authentication, or we have ADFS type of authentication. So we will see on that part as well. But for now, we need to understand that we can connect the on-prem and the cloud have the connectivity and can be connected. Now, as we see in this diagram here, we have on-prem, we have Microsoft Azure, which is Entra referred as here. So we'll just use the pen here. This is your Entra solution. Okay. Now you compare Entra or Azure AD versus Active Directory Domain Services. What is the comparison between the two? So in the ADDS environment, we use Kerberos or NTLM for authentication, and we have applications in the on-prem environment, and we can locally connect to those environment. But when you have Azure environment, then the applications are dependent on Azure Active Directory, which is now known as Entra, right? And here we have various authentication platforms like SAML, OpenID, WS Federation, OAuth, etc. And this is totally on HTTP and HTTPS. So that's a clear difference, but we need to understand in both the environments like Active Directory Domain Services or Entra, we use users and groups we create for authentication and authorization in both the cases. So if we see Azure Active Directory or Entra includes SAML, OpenID, WS federations, and here tenant like structure is there. But when you compare with on-prem, which is Active Directory Domain Services, there we have Kerberos and NTLM, and forest like structure of Azure Active Directory is there. So authentication and authorization for on-premises printers, applications, file services and more can be done from the on-prem end by ADDS. Now let's talk about roles. So there are a lot of roles, but before the roles, we will understand the user, uh, what a user is. Now here is a small introduction about Azure ADDS. Now as I told you, there are some applications which are there into your on-prem environment, but those are totally dependent on Azure AD. Now, when they are moved to Azure environment or Azure Active Directory or Entra, then they require Azure ADDS service for the connectivity so that they can be integrated with Entra and use corporate credentials and use NTLM and Kerberos authentication, just like we discussed a while ago. Now, the first topic here is about Entra users. What are users? So user is, for example, you have a company, you have employees within the company. Those employees we need to create credentials so that they can have an account within the company's portal as well. So in the same way in Azure also we create user identities for the employees to work on different services like VMs or storage account or DBs or IoT services, ML services, AI services, etc. So user account needs to be created. So when you create a user account, those user account will be used for authentication, that is verifying the user ID is password or not, and then authorization, that means verifying what the roles are associated. And there are different types of users that we have, like Azure AD users, Active Directory guest, or B2B or B2C. In the terms of Entra, we can say the same names, but now we will use that we have Entra users, we have Entra guest users, we have B2C and B2B environment. We will talk about B2C and B2B environment later on, but understand that there are two main categories, Entra users or inbuilt users we can say, or the guest users. Now let's discuss what are the inbuilt user or guest user. For that, to understand that, we will have to go in the Azure portal. So let's go back here. So we have Microsoft Entra. We'll go to the user section, and there are two types of users that we have. One are member listed. If you scroll down, that there can be a guest user as well. We'll create both. First, we'll create a new user. So, what's your name? Hani. It's Hani, right? Ah. So, I will create a user named Hani here, and his display name will be Hani, and I will copy the password. And this is the username, UPN we call it. If I told you that I have a default domain, Ankita Jama Koenig .on Microsoft.com. If I want to create another UPN, I can use the one that I have bought from any domain name registrar like Learners Inside Liveblog.com. So you can create different UPNs for the user. For example, some company is there XYZ. So maybe I'm creating a user, then I will write the name as Hani at the rate XYZ company .com. So in this way, you can create custom user principal names for the user. And here we have a display name for the user. You can have auto generated password. You can copy the password because this password will be asked when the first time Hani will log in. And we have the account status, which is in enabled state. If you disable this, the user, even if you share the credential with the user, he will not be able to sign in. It is a kind of blocking the user, giving him the account details, but I'm not allowing him to sign in now. So I want that to enable. Okay. Then we have additional properties, like we can give the user first name, the last name, etc. And a lot of like job title, company name, but these are all optional in nature. Next we have assignment. We'll go to the assignment tab. Assignment is adding this user to a administrative unit, adding it to a group, or adding a role or permission. So we'll do this later on. You can do that later on as well. Next is review and create, and this is the credentials for Hani, and we are creating a user account for Hani. So let's refresh this page, and we have a user created, which is Hani at the rate Ankita Juma Koenig on Microsoft.com. Now I will try to sign in as this user, but for that sign in, I think I have to open a new window. I will open Chrome for that. We'll type portal.azure.com. and we have to use another account to log in, not this account. We will use the username that I've created, Hani. That's a quite big username, but anyway. And we will copy the password that that I have for Hani. I copied it from the portal, and I will try to sign in here. And at the first sign in, the user will be asked, imagine Hani is signing in. So at the first time of sign in, user will be asked to reset the password. I'm just resetting the password for the user. And MFA will be required, so we can skip the MFA for 14 days. So I'm doing that. So I'm logged in as Hani here, right? At the top you can see. And I will go to the section of Entra in Hani's account. So I am logged in as Hani here. Okay. Now here you can see what are the licenses here. We have the manage section. In the manage section, we can see roles and administrators. And there are a lot of roles, but what is the role of Hani? He is a user, right? And we'll go back to roles and administrators here again. And can he create a user? By default, he does not have any permission, but can he create a user? We'll click on add a new user and it is grayed out. He cannot create a user. Why? Because permissions are not associated with his account. So for that what, and then we'll click on all user section and we'll click on the user ID that we created. And on this user ID, we'll click on assign roles and we'll assign some permission so that he can create users, manage users. So for that, what I will do, I will add a role for Hani, add an assignment. So a user administrator role is there in which you can manage the users and so on. You can also give higher elevated permissions like global admin. He has all the rights, but usually these elevated permissions are not granted to the users. Why? Because we want to retain the security of the account, right? So for that, we will create a user administrator and add it. Once the role has been added, you need to refresh the page and you can see the role is executable here. Now we'll go back to his login and just refresh the page. And now let's see. Okay, it is grayed out. You need to check his roles, whether it is updated or not. Okay, now he is a user administrator. Fine. We'll go back again to the user creation process. Now here it is, you can see it is not grayed out. He can create a user. Is it clear till here about the user? Okay. So that was creating a user. But what about inviting a user? What is a guest user? Now here you can see, if I go to the default directory in the user section, so first I created authentication, verifying username and password, and second, by giving a user administrator role, I am giving authorization. Now here we can see that Hani is added as a member. But if you want to invite an external user, so you can invite the user also. Those users will be renamed as guest users. Do you have a personal account mail ID so that I can send you an invite? Yeah, any Gmail you can give. Just give me 1 minute to create a new user, that is invite an external user. Now you please tell me your email address. What is it? Dot. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's your personal mail ID. Now, guest users are invited from different social media accounts like Gmail and so on, and they are part of the user group. You don't need to accept that invitation, just you will see how the invitation is received. Okay. So I will display the name as Hani here and send an invite as hi, and you can give additional properties, you can give an assignment, add roles, etc., and then invite the user. So an invitation will be sent to your mail ID. If you accept that invitation, you will be part of the user group in this directory. Also, you can use the same username and password of Gmail to sign in into the Azure portal. So that is the advantage of guest user. Now if I refresh, I have 19 users, and here you can see one is a member, one is a guest user. So in this way we can create users, either member user which is inbuilt user, or guest users which are invited from other platforms. So I hope you have received the invitation in your mail ID. And here you can see for Honey, if I go to details or properties for the user, I can see that invitation has been sent, but the acceptance is not there. It is pending acceptance. So no need of accepting that. But here I can monitor things for you. I can assign roles. I can check audit logs if you sign in. Okay, for every user, whatever activity he is performing in the account, it can be viewed by the global admin, which in this case is me. So I have this account, and if I want to check the audit logs, honey, these are the audit logs, and these are the sign in activities. Okay, from where he has signed in and all. So everything you can monitor for the user. You can give licenses for to the user, you can assign some application, you can give some administrative units, licenses, devices, etc. So that's how we create users. Now the next topic is about groups. So I will just change the sign in from here. So we are having multi-factor authentication. That is why we get a authenticator code before sign in. So that's a part of MFA. Now I will go back to Microsoft Entra, and then we have the section of users and groups. We have the group section. That means now we are individually creating one user, two user, but and then providing them the permission. But if we have more than one users, hundreds of users are there, so rather than that, we create a new group and we assign the permissions at the group level, and all the individual users will inherit those permissions. So that is why we have the group concept. In users also, you can add more than one users if you want. If I go to the user section, so we have bulk operations here. We can bulk create hundreds of users at a time. So a CSV format will be downloaded. You have to just open that CSV format. I think I have to go here. It is opening. You see, we have the name, username, and initial password, which you have, which and also block sign in or not, which is important. And the rest of the information are optional. If you want to fill it you can put the details for that. But these four columns, you need to edit this one for the example type, and then add hundreds of entries. And once you have edited all of those entries, then you need to go to again the bulk create option here, and no need of downloading the CSV because you have already downloaded. Just upload, browse from your system and upload the updated CSV file, and all those 100 users will be added at once. So that's the benefit of bulk operations. In fact, in the users, you have more greater control over the number of users that you have. Not only you can do bulk operations, you can download this list of all the users which are there in a CSV format, and also you can set up per user MFA, that is multi-factor for the user. So I need to have the admin login for that. So per user MFA, we can set up for each of the user that is there. Okay, so this is Hani's account. Let me sign in from my account. So this is the admin account. So we'll go to per user MFA. And for each of the user, you can set MFA. For example, I want Hani to complete the MFA and Bisset to complete the MFA, then only they will be able to log in. Since I have enforced this MFA, then you need to first complete MFA, then only Hani and Bisset will be able to log in. Now here you can see the state of Bisset, it is enabled, and for Hani also it is enabled MFA. So you can do certain operations or management operations using the Entra service that we have, and also you can manage group of the users. So if you create groups, groups can be created of two types. One is Microsoft 365 group or security group. Microsoft 365 group is for the set of users which need collaborative access over certain things like Teams, Calendar, SharePoint, etc. And when we talk about security group, it is for users and providing permissions to the users. So when you click on new group, you have both the options which will be reflected, either security group or Microsoft 365 group. And when you have to give the group name, the group description, and in the membership type you have to give assigned or dynamic. Here only I am getting assigned because I am not having premium licenses associated with the account. The moment you have premium licenses associated with the account, you can go for dynamic as well. In dynamic, a certain query or the condition is fulfilled, and then the user is automatically added to a certain group. For example, any users whose location is equals to East US or certain parameters like this. But in assigned, you can select who the owner is from the list of the users that you have. You can select an owner, and you can select who the member is from the list of the users that you have. For example, I want to make Hari the owner of the account, and in the members I want to add certain list of the users mentioned here. Like you can add service principal, groups, devices, enterprises, applications. So not service principal, but yes, groups, devices, enterprise application. So we have ANE user 1 and ANE user 2, and select this. These are the two members. One is the owner. We have group name. So maybe we can say that is Azure demo that we are doing. Okay. And in the group description, we can write for Azure demo group and create it. So a new group can be easily created. That is a security type of group. If you want, you can create Microsoft 365 group as well. So the same is given in the presentation as well, that you can create two types of group. One is security group and one is Microsoft 365 group. And when it comes to assignment, you can have assigned user, dynamic user, or dynamic device, any of them. We also have the concept of administrative unit in Azure, which is very important. Administrative unit is a only for admin related permissions you want to give, and users and groups can be added within the admin group. If you add a group, it does not mean that all the members of the group will inherit the permissions from the administrative point of view, the permission point of view. So you must have a permission of a global administrator or privileged identity management to execute administrative unit in Azure AD. And administrative unit is closely linked to privileged identity management. All the capabilities of PIM you can use it here. So again, this comes as you must have global admin rights for the owners, but not for the members here, right? So if we go for administrative functionalities here, we'll go back to the home page, go to Microsoft Entra again, and then we have administrative unit here. So you can create administrative units in your portal, right? We have add option. We can click on add, and you can give the name and the description of the administrative group. For example, that this is new AD group. Okay, this is an admin related group. Okay, so restrict management administrative unit. If you want to restrict, if you don't want talent level administrators to inherit the roles, then you can click on yes. Then we have certain admin related capabilities. Only these many roles are there. Okay. For example, I want to give certain maybe password administrator to a user. So I can select a user and give him an admin permission. So maybe I will take Bipul and make him a password administrator next, and then I create the group. So a group is created, and here you can have users, you can add users, right? Add members to this group. If you want to add the groups within the group, administrative group, but always remember, inheritance of the permission over all the members of the group will not be there. And we can add devices, and we can add a admin role or administrator according to our requirement. We can select maybe authentication administrator, we want to give it to someone. So in the assignment section, you will see that we can search the user by the name, or we can even search for the particular role. Let's see here. If I go for authentication administrator, so we have search options, descriptions. Okay, all of these capabilities can be done by an authentication administrator. And if you have premium licenses with the privileged view, you can see whether it is an expired assignment, active assignment, or eligible assignment, but you must have a premium license for that. Is the idea of groups and users clear till here? Thank you everyone. Like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel and keep learning.